Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. Today we're out here in the Arizona desert on the trails test driving the new 2022 Honda Passport. It's got a refresh for this year in its styling, and they've added this new trim grade called the Trailsport, hence the trails today. So I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a test drive, and then I'm going to tell you what I really think. All right, my friends, let's talk about the new 2022 Honda Passport. They've given it a redesign for this year, and by redesign I mean a styling refresh. They've freshened up the styling a little bit, and what we've got here is a Trailsport trim grade, a new trim grade for 2022 that's a little more off-roady in its character. As tested, we're at $44,000 and some change. This trim grade being based on one of the upper ends of the trim grade scale for the Passport. So looking at the styling, pretty much everything from the front door forward is new fenders, new hood, new front bumper, new grille, new headlights. And it's a much more square-jawed look, definitely more truck-like, definitely more SUV-like. Honda can no longer be accused of giving us a car in an SUV silhouette when it comes to the styling. It's definitely got a little bit more hair on its chest, dare I say it. When you step up to the Trailsport, that even adds a little bit more hair on the chest. Down in that lower bumper, a little bit more of a chewy off-road style bumper fascia. You've got a metallic finish bumper skid plate garnish is what they call it. It's not really a skid plate, it just kind of looks like one. But the grille design and the black plastic gloss trim here, all unique to the Trailsport, in addition to that badge there in the center. LED headlights, LED fog lights. And coming around the corner is where we see another big off-roady looking element. And it's actually functional here. These are actually smaller wheels than what you're going to find on the rest of the line of Passports, which are 20 inches. These are 18 with some all-season tires that have a nice chewy sidewall design. These are really a great thing to have if you're actually going to be taking this vehicle off-road, because those 20-inch wheels and tires with a low profile will give you a rough ride, and those wheels are easy to, sort of tear up if you're out here going over rocks and things. So I'm really going to be interested to see how this affects the handling for the vehicle. From this angle, you can really see how this differs from the Pilot. It's definitely got a more bobtail, shortened rear hind quarter, and definitely has a little bit more of a petite look, although Honda probably wouldn't like me using the word petite to describe the silhouette on this off-road rugged vehicle. That said, looking at the roof line, one of the design elements that I do like is that line, that character line at the top of the windows that goes all the way into the back and creates sort of a floating roof panel look. If that were a different paint color, that would really pop, I think. Also seen up there is a standard roof rack gloss black on this particular vehicle. As we would expect in this particular class, this is a power rear liftgate, controllable in a number of ways, the key fob in particular. And that's just nice when you have groceries and an armful of things and you're out there shopping. LED taillights on this. You'll notice the Trailsport badge on the back, black emblems. And down at the lower bumper level, they've redesigned this for 2022 across the trim grades. On this one, it has that skid plate design garnish, just like you see at the front. And always welcome in my design book, larger dual exhaust tips. And these are the real thing, not fakes like some of the brands out there are throwing us. Because the Trailsport is based on one of the higher trim grades, very similar to Touring, you're going to find a lot of feature content in here, starting with leather seats. And this is really one of the big differences you're going to notice in the Trailsport, is that these leather seats have orange accent stitching. They've got the Trailsport logo embroidered into the headrests, and they're very attractive looking, to be quite honest. I find that they're very comfortable. Honda seats usually are. It's one thing Honda's very well known for, is the comfort of their seats. They are both power operated, and they are both heated seats in this particular model, but not ventilated. Steering wheel is leather. It has paddle shifters for the 9-speed automatic transmission and a full suite of controls for the instrument cluster as well as the infotainment system. Ahead of me is a fully digital instrument cluster center screen. It has 2 analog dials, one on each side. That screen, in typical Honda fashion, is very easy to read. It's got good graphics and I found that you can do some customization with it along the way. Center stack, again, typical Honda fashion. It looks very much like any other Honda that you're going to sit in terms of design. It's got a screen up high, and then HVAC controls are in the middle. There's a little cubby right here that's big enough to put your phone. There's also, in this particular model, a wireless phone charger pad down at the bottom, as well as your outlets. Behind that, cup holders off to the side, great location, and the push button gear selector just behind that. This has these armrests, which I actually really kind of like in this vehicle, and one of the reasons that is because this has a very low console. It doesn't have the high console lid that you find in a lot of vehicles. No, instead it's got this package tray down here that you can put a purse on. You can put other things on, food if you're eating on a road trip, but it has a roll top and a lot of storage down in the bottom. Quite a bit. I would say that's 2 rectangular, maybe even 3 rectangular tissue boxes, at least 3 square ones. That's always my point of measure. Other items that you're going to find here in the Trailsport that are part of the package are these beautiful rubber all-weather floor mats down at the bottom. I happen to like these things a lot in any SUV, so that's why I'm calling them beautiful. Plus they look pretty cool too. Also, orange ambient lighting. The back seat of the Passport is a place that I've actually found to be pretty comfortable. It's got a good seating height, which is my first measure of am I comfortable? I'm not sitting down on a floor. And there's a lot of range of adjustment here to get it just right for you. There is a sliding adjustment. You can put that just about anywhere you like. And then also there is a back rake adjustment so that you can set the recline to where you want it. And a lot of that's because there is so much space in here because they're not trying to put a third row behind the seat. As you can see back there, a very large cargo area. And to put the second row seats down, there's buttons back there that allow you to just on the fly press those buttons and down go the seats. I love that. Cargo area is about 50.5 cubic feet with the second row up and just a little bit over 100 with it down. That is pretty sizable, and that load floor is pretty flat. Underneath that rear floor, you're going to find an extra storage area. Amenities back here are plentiful. I do have vents here in the back. Down at the bottom, there's an AC power port and 2 USB ports. There's also another AC port in the back. Over here, window shades for the back row. That's a very nice thing. And of course here, a fold down armrest with cup holders. When it comes to rating this interior, I'm pretty impressed, as I usually am with a Honda. They do interiors very well, particularly with fit and finish. The lines, the tactile quality, the switchgear is always very good. It's always a place to be that is one of the best in the business. The materials in here, however, do feel a little bit cheaper than a lot of the Hondas that I sat in, and I'm not a real big fan of this push button gear selector, so this interior gets 4 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system here is a system that's been around with Honda for quite a while. This is one of the more modern versions that does have a volume knob on it, but looking at the screen, this has a very glossy screen and it has good graphics. They're very pleasing to look at, and actually using the system for the most part is very intuitive and easy to control. It comes with native navigation, which is a good thing because a lot of systems now they tend to not have that anymore. Toyota, for instance, makes you pay for that in a subscription. They make you pay for a lot of things in a subscription, but this has a very high quality sound. Not the best, but pretty good. Sirius XM, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, but they are wired here, not wireless. And this does have a multi-view screen. Not a 360-degree view, but multiple single views that you can have at any time. It's a pretty good system. It could still use a tuning knob because tuning the stations still requires you to tap, 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 tap on virtual buttons. I'd really just prefer to have a knob. It'd make it so much easier. Overall, though, this system gets 4 out of 5 stars. All right, so we are going to start our test drive out here on the trail, since we're in the Trailsport and all. One of the things that they've given us for actually enjoying this experience are these off-road oriented tires and wheels. The smaller 18-inch wheel with the taller sidewall. But that is the only thing that's different about the Trailsport relative to off-roading. They've not given us a different suspension or any chassis modifications above and beyond that which comes on the normal Passport. That said, this is a ride that is pretty firm out here in the rough, very staccato. You can look that up. It's a musical term. but it is apropos for how this chassis is tuned, which is to say you can feel every little bump and every little rut. It's very firm, and you get a lot of detail in the feel from the road. The steering has a nice light feel, which makes maneuvering easy, but the ride is a bit jarring. And I think that's because that for the most part, the suspension still is tuned for a good on-road handling experience, whereas the more you get into off-road oriented vehicles, they tend to soften that suspension so that you can blow and go over these trails at a bit higher clip without beating yourself to death. But out here, it does feel like it's well put together and solid. I am getting some rattling in the interior trim. But when it comes to how well put together this is, the big test is always the desert washboard road. Out here, this washboard surface can vibrate a car and really tell me how well bolted together the chassis is, how well bolted together this interior is, and how well tuned the chassis is to isolate you from the rigors of the off-road world. What I'm finding out right away is this is a very high tensile strength chassis, which means all of the rhythmic vibration that's coming through this washboard surface into the vehicle is being transmitted to me in here. I'm getting a lot of noise, I'm getting a lot of resonation from this vibrating surface, and a lot of rattling from this interior trim, more than I expected. This light steering does make handling it out here on the curves very confident. The stability control is doing a good job of arresting this vehicle's want to slide and do some pitch and yaw on this gravel surface. So when I throw it into a corner like this, I can just feel it catching. But I think the overall experience here that really is the exclamation point is the fact that I'm just getting a lot of rattling and jitteriness in this chassis and in the interior trim. On the pavement, the handling is much more akin to the car-like driving experience that this chassis is most known for. Around town, that firm ride that we just talked about on the rough gives this a confident character when turning corners, going around curves, and negotiating your day-to-day drive around town. Out on the highway, this has a nice, solid, precision driving character. Road noise is a little bit lower than average. I tested 70 mile an hour on our freeway test at 60.8 decibels. That's a little bit below the average, which is about 61 to 62. A small difference, but most of the noise was wind noise, louder than road noise. Bottom line is that Honda has always typically offered a very precision driving experience in the way the steering feels, in the way the chassis feels. And while that is something that really pays dividends here on the pavement around town and on the highway, it doesn't necessarily help you off-road. This is still a vehicle that's tuned for street driving. This chassis gets 4 out of 5 stars. Now it's time to talk about powertrain. So let me come to a complete stop, because the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? And 60. Okay, so it's a little bit leisurely. What is under the hood is a 3.5 liter single overhead cam V6. Notice I said single. It has 280 horsepower, 262 pound-feet of torque. This also features the variable cylinder management to save fuel, and it's mated to a 9-speed automatic transmission. The other thing you might have noticed back there when I first stopped and we got ready to go was the engine shut off, and that's because this has auto start-stop, which I hate with a passion of 1,000 fires. It's just very annoying. I come to a stop, engine shuts off, I let off the gas, it takes a second to turn back on, and then off we go. Now, some cars are better than others with this auto start-stop system, but this one is very slow and unrefined. this has the slowest response time and startup time that I've experienced in quite a long time. The good news is it does have an off switch, so you can turn it off, but it defaults to on every time you start the car. It's just an annoying system that really disturbs your peace in the driving experience, in my opinion. Plus, the air conditioner goes stale when that engine shuts off. So that said, this is a powertrain that, because it is a V6, has a pretty uncommon level of refinement and smoothness in today's market. So many vehicles have gotten rid of V6s, and now we have four-cylinder turbos. And so it's kind of a breath of fresh air in that respect to have the thrum of a V6 under the foot. And the level of power, even though I would call it adequate, not necessarily quick, a lot of that's because this has a lot of weight. These paddle shifters really do give you a little sense of control. But they are toys at the end of the day. They won't actually work unless the computer determines that it's okay to shift the gears, and sometimes it'll still shift the gears even after you've done it. So they're there, they're toys, they're fun if you want them, and that's about as fun as it gets because we don't have a gear lever down here. When it comes to fuel economy, this is rated at 19 city, 24 highway, and 21 MPG combined, and that's including the 9-speed automatic, the auto start stop, and the variable cylinder management as ways to save fuel. But in my week with it, I got about 20, and that's about a 50-50 blend of highway and city driving. So I got pretty close to what it promises, but that's still a pretty thirsty number in my opinion. We're living in a day and age where people are starting to expect high 20s and into 30s for most of our vehicles. This V6, long in tooth, it's been around for a while. I suspect that if Honda's going to be offering better fuel economy in vehicles like this, they're going to have to start offering either four-cylinder turbos or other ways of getting it. I've shown it to you inside and out. We've taken it for a test drive, and now it's time to sort of stand back a little bit and really talk about, is this a good value and how does it compete out there in the marketplace? First off, I like most of the changes they've made for 2022 in the refresh, some of the styling elements, and I like this Trailsport trim grade. This does add a little bit more hair on the chest, so to speak, for this vehicle, in addition to that new front end styling and some of the other things. One of the criticisms of this vehicle has always been it doesn't quite live up to that SUV flavor. It's kind of car-ish. That said, when we look at some of the marketing materials that Honda has given us, they compare this directly against the Toyota 4Runner, which I find curious because they couldn't be two vehicles more far apart other than being in the same price range, being in the same size range. They both have two rows. They both purport to be SUVs and off-road vehicles. The Toyota 4Runner is that. It's a truck with a frame. It is a true off-road vehicle. This, on the other hand, is a car-based front-wheel drive oriented crossover vehicle that looks like an SUV. So I don't mean that as a slap to Honda, but if you're comparing this against a 4Runner, you need to know those key differences before you start digging into the cargo space and the towing and all of these little things that the manufacturers would have us look at. That said, when I look at the price here, $44,000, we are on the middle to the high end of this competitive range. Features for this money, there are other brands out there that offer more. Hyundai and Kia come to mind. But we have here Honda quality and Honda precision, the Honda interior. These are all things the brand is known for being very good at. Even that said, warranty coverage, though not the best in the business. Hyundai Kia certainly outshines us there, and some of the other brands actually offer a little bit better warranty coverage as well. So all in, when it comes to measuring value and competitiveness, I put that at 4 out of 5 stars. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 4 out of 5 stars for the total review. So there you go. I like it. It's a good option, definitely worth a test drive. You're going to pay for it. Honda doesn't discount anything. In fact, right now in the market, you're probably going to pay well over sticker. You know, that's just the way the world is right now. So please follow us on social media to keep up on all the other test drives we got going on. You can see those links down there. See our latest video right there. Better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there. Either way, stay tuned.